right. Welcome to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. I am incredibly excited to be joined by two industry leaders today to talk all about the most exciting industry trends that we're seeing this year. At the end of today's live episode, we'll have a live Q&A, so make sure you've got some of your questions in hand. You can throw those into the chat at any time, and we'll capture those and answer them at the end. Also, if you're a longtime listener of the show, please add a comment in the chat saying hello and let me know how long you've been listening or watching Digital Builder. I'd be interested in hearing that. And of course, if you're brand new, I'd love to know that too. So please chime in and maybe share what inspired you to join us today. So enough from me. It's time to introduce the real reason that you're all here today, today's guests. So to help tell this construction industry trend story, I am joined by Ariel Castillo, the Innovation Director at Miller Davis Company, and Brad Buckles, the Vice President of Technology and Innovation at CPPI. So gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you both feeling today?
Eric, I got to tell you, I'm excited and I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
I appreciate it, man. Like I told you when we first met, your name's crossed my inbox a few times, and so it's a pleasure to connect with you directly here in front of our delightful audience. Ariel, how are you feeling, man? You've been on the show before. It clearly didn't go too badly since you're back. How you feeling?
Really happy to be back, man. We had a lot of fun last time. It's been, I think, a couple of years now. And, your show has grown a lot. And, again, really happy to be part of this live event.
Yeah, man, you were early on in the days where I might not have known what I was doing so much, but we figured it out in the platforms here, which is really exciting. So I hope everybody out there is also as fired up as these gentlemen. So let's flip our script today a little bit. I'm going to start us off with my favorite question, and I'm going to send it to Brad first. What is one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
Yeah, so that would have to be Autodesk Construction Cloud's cost management. We use cost management on every single project in our company, and we have it fully integrated with our back office accounting system. Couldn't live without it.
Awesome. Ariel, I know you've answered this question before, and I don't remember what you said. As you pointed out, it's been a couple of years. What's one tool that you'll always use? And I wonder, was it the same as what you said the last time?
I'll give you the same answer. You said a tool, so it doesn't have to be digital. And typically I just go with, I need a piece of paper and a pen. I need to make notes. Every meeting that we have, jot down those notes and make sure that we're tracking them. Otherwise, we get so many ideas every day that we may forget a couple in the way. So it's good to have notes.
It makes sense. And I know we're all very staunch digital advocates, but I oftentimes will still jot down things by hand as well. And I think to-do list for me specifically, I've said this before, there's something very satisfying about being able to just cross the thing off and move on, much to the point of I think in the past I've added make a to-do list to my to-do list just so I could chop that one off and start out strong. So I love that answer as well. But let's get into today's construction trends and really start unpacking what the heck is happening in the industry for everybody out there today. So let's start this off. I've got a rapid fire question round planned here, and I'm going to say some of the most common themes that I've seen trending this year so far, and I want both of our guests to either say hype or real in response to that particular trend. So I think we'll get a bunch of these out of the way that might be top of mind for our guests and for our live audience. Feel free to play along in the chat. I'd like to see if your expectations align with our leaders here. So we'll start with Ariel answering first, or Brad answering first, and Ariel following, just to avoid any confusion. But first on our list, artificial intelligence, hyper real.
Hype-ish, but definitely real.
I will say both. It's hype and real.
All right. I'm looking forward to unpacking that specifically today. That's going to be a big one. ChatGPT.
Real.
Real.
All right. Augmented and virtual reality.
Real.
I would say real in the office, but hype in the field.
All right. That's an exciting point right now. I think we're starting to trend more towards field, but I'd incline to agree with you on that one. Offsite prefabrication and modular construction.
Real for sure.
Real. Yep.
I'm not surprised at either of your answers on that one. How about mass timber construction?
Oof.
Real.
I mean, it can be real. It had some challenges, but definitely real.
All right, we'll talk about that one in a minute. Remote work.
Definitely real.
100% real, man.
All right, that makes me feel good inside as a remote employee myself. All right, let's flip that one over as far as who answers first. Drones.
Real.
Real for sure.
How about the robot overlords that are coming for our jobs?
No, no, man. Come on. Like, well, it depends. If they're coming for a job in the future, one thing. But I would say hype for now.
Hype for now, absolutely.
All right, integrated project delivery or non-traditional delivery methods.
That is real. I mean, I don't know if to the full extent of IPDs, but I can see that being real.
I would agree.
All right, using 3D models out in the field.
Real. 100%.
Real.
And 3D printed buildings is the last on my list.
Hype for now.
Hype.
All right. Well, you guys are generally in line, and I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about the ones that you had the strongest reactions to. But I did notice mass timber. We had a little bit of a disagreement here. So should we unpack this for a second? I'd love to hear your elevator pitch on why that trend or is potentially hype or otherwise. Brad, how would you go first, man?
Well, I think that it's going to be, it all boils down to scalability. And I think in order for it to become real, it's going to have to become more accessible in the areas to which we operate in. And I think it does have a lot of potential, but I think accessibility is going to be its number one challenge right
All right, Ariel, on the other side of that opinion, let's hear what you think.
I agree with Brad. I mean, the reality is that it's not about making it once. It's about how can I do this on a regular basis, and how can the industry adopt it. We have really good examples. Like we have a new skyscraper. It's mass timber located in, I believe it's Milwaukee. I know for sure it's Wisconsin. So, that was a breakthrough, and that was really interesting. Now the question is, are we going to see that everywhere else? I don't know. I mean, we're struggling with workforce for a lot of things that we already know how to do. Imagine things that we need to basically reteach them into how to do mass timber. So it's kind of
now.
tricky there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it becomes sustainability, right? I mean, can we sustain that type of construction? It's yet to be determined.
it's an interesting dual layer because I mean we've got the carbon encapsulation conversations and a lot of nuances tied to mass timber that are really exciting. Fortuitously enough, we have an episode of Digital Builder coming out in the next couple months on mass timber specifically. So if this theme pikes your interest, make sure you check it out because it's going to be coming your direction. Cool. Well, the other one that had a little bit of a hesitation there was our robot overlords, and I joke about that one. I know many folks feel like they're coming for our jobs, and I always try to reiterate from my opinion, not that anybody's here for my opinion today, but my perspective is it's that augmentation conversation. It's how do we help folks do things that they can't do at scale or take away some of the dangerous things, get people out of confined spaces. So I think robots have a place in our industry, but given our labor challenges, they're not going to be taking everybody's jobs and sending everybody home by any means. At least that's my take. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that one or not.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's an opportunity to improve safety with some of the wearables that are coming out, and I'm starting to see some meaningful wearables that can help save backs and help with safety measures. We're obviously seeing robotic layout becoming an opportunity to speed the schedule up a little bit and improve the accuracy of layout. And of course, you got to love the adorable Spot that's out there walking around job sites. And so, are they solving real world problems today? Yes, they are. But taking jobs away anytime soon, not happening, and definitely not happening in 2024. Not even close.
I'd agree with you there. Ariel, how you feeling on that topic?
Yeah, Brad just touched on it. It's let's talk about the present. I mean, how do you define a robot? I mean, there's a lot of things we do, like robotic layouts. I mean, That's something that we are implementing, right? What about drones? Drones can fly by
Hmm.
themselves. They create their own path, and that's something that they're pretty much doing it in theory by themselves. You still need a pilot to be present, but if you say something about like, hey, robots that are coming for jobs, I mean, come on, man. I mean, we're far away from that. I mean, Boston Dynamics is doing a great job, and you can see Spot, or you can see like Atlas as well. But to the point that you're like, hey, there's nobody in this field, and we have robots taking care of it. I mean, I'm not gonna say sci-fi, but we're far out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that we need to develop at this point to, people joke about the Skynet, and I think that touches on our artificial intelligence conversation coming. And then rest assured, the Terminators aren't headed our direction. But I digress on that one a little bit. But I'd love it if you guys could share which of those out of the list, did you have the strongest reaction to? Brad, I think if you want to go first, and then Ariel, I'd be interested if there's anything here specifically that you feel very fired up about.
Well, artificial intelligence is definitely one that pops out to me. Everybody talks about it. I mean, we're hearing a lot of noise, and that's why I said it's hypish. It's hypish in the sense that a lot of people are talking about it, but we're not really. Not a lot of people are out there addressing real world problems, and I think that's where AI is going to provide the most value. It's going to do two things in 2024. One, it's going to be able to continue to bring data to us in a more visible way. We're going to be able to see the challenges that we face on our construction job sites, and it's going to make those more visible. So it's going to bring the cream to the top. The second thing that I think we're going to start seeing more and more of when it comes to AI in 2024 is that it's going to do something for us. So it's not just delivering information to us in a meaningful way, but it's actually going to be doing things for us. And until we can start identifying what the root causes of some of the problems, and we talk about labor shortages, we talk about staffing job sites, things such as that, and we're also talking about shorter schedules with um, lower fees or tighter budgets. So we need AI to step up, and we need AI to do it in a way in which it starts to address real world problems. And there's so much hype that's going out there. There's so much noise that's just being generated in the background. And that's all exciting because out of that noise, oftentimes innovative ideas surface. And so I don't want to, quelch that in any way. I want to continue to inspire those innovators out there to dream up and think of ways where AI can help us. But at the same time, I think we need to sit back and we need to look at it from an objective standpoint and see how can this actually serve the purpose of building construction in a meaningful way.
It makes sense. And Ariel, I'd be interested to hear what's resonating most strongly with you out of that list, or is there something that I might have missed that you'd like to share here too?
Yeah, so for me, it's probably not as exciting. It's not a buzzword anymore, but I would say IPD, integrated project delivery, and then also non-traditional delivery methods. And the key there is collaboration. I think that as an industry, we're growing. Uh, we're getting to the point where we are mature enough to understand the importance of collaborating. It's very typical to talk about how we operate in silos, not only as an industry, right? So you may have like your AE teams, your construction and owners and everybody else operating in silos, but even inside your company, there might be silos as well. So you have like the field not necessarily collaborating with the office, for project management, for accounting, and so on. So how do I make sure that we are collaborating internally and also externally? And there's so many tools out there, and there's so many opportunities. And I think it's becoming evident that if we are collaborating, if we are working in an integrated way, there's so many ways that our projects and our industry can benefit.
I'm nodding furiously because I'm admittedly bullish on IPD and alternate delivery methods myself. I think we've been a little beholden to a bit of a tense contract method, for lack of a better descriptor at times, and I think it makes it challenging to really come to the table and collaborate in the way that you're speaking to right now. So I'm going to furiously nod in agreement because I think it's an important thing for us to consider. But let's move along. And Ariel, I'd be interested in hearing a bit more. How do you personally discover and evaluate some of these new or consistently buzzing trends to really decide if they're real or hype, as we've kind of done at the start of this conversation. When do you decide to reevaluate if something to see if it's improved or not?
Well, I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but I'm definitely going to say that you just have to stay away from that. I mean, do not fall for the typical buzzwords and, you know, or the hashtags that everybody's talking about, right? Why am I saying this? Because we typically it's easy to get distracted from this shiny new toys that are out there. And I think that the essence should be I need to pay attention and focus on the real pain points that my company's going through. Every time that I have presented it, I would say in the last couple of years, I always bring this up. Pain points. You can have mosquito bites, you can have shark bites. Mosquito bites are things that are, they bother you, but you're not necessarily suffering. But a shark bite, come on, I mean, you can easily die, right? So I have said that many, many times. And the reason I bring it up again is do not get distracted by these buzzwords and these trends. Make sure that you keep an eye on what is making me suffer as a company and what is potentially something out there that I can eventually implement, and improve the way we do work, our deliverable, and enhance our relationship with subcontractors, architects, engineers, and owners.
I love that. And you hear me say shiny new toy syndrome semi-often on Digital Builder. And it's a real thing. I mean, if we look at how construction technologies evolved, for many years, there wasn't a lot out there for us to consume and consider. And as tech has gotten more effective in the last 5 to 10 years, the number of choices is crazy. And so it's easy to do exactly what you're alluding to and start chasing that hype. But you have to make sure you're answering the mail for your team and figuring out, what solutions are going to benefit them instead of just doing something for the sake of it at times, I think. Brad, how does that align with your take on chasing down new trends and, bringing them to your team?
Ariel did such a great explanation of his take of it, and I would have to agree on all points. There are so much hype that's going on there. There's so many new shiny toys, as you mentioned, Eric, that are out there, and that's so exciting. I mean, how exciting is it to be in construction in 2024? I mean, we are seeing an elevated increase in opportunities to really bring value to our company and to our projects. So I run technology through a kind of a litmus test, if you will. It has to pass three certain pillars, at least one of these three. It has to improve the profitability of the company, improve the productivity of the folks that are on the project, or and also pass a performance test. So are we getting what we need? So profitability, productivity, and performance. If it doesn't do at least one of those three pillars, then it needs to go in the garbage. We need to move on to something that serves the company in a more meaningful way. And it also has to address root cause issues. We're not wanting point solutions to fix problems. We're wanting to go to the root cause of those problems, address it at that level, and that's where you're going to see the biggest impact when it comes to technology and innovation within a company. So many times we see a problem that exists and we can solve that problem by throwing money at it or throwing software at it, if you will, but it doesn't solve the root cause of the problem. And so I like to try to bring our people into the room, find out where those pain points are, those bites that Ariel had mentioned, and determine what is the root cause of this problem. Let's address it at that level. And if the software or the technology that we're putting out on the projects aren't doing that, then it needs to be thrown away. And we need to continue to measure whether or not that technology is holding up to that litmus test as we move forward.
It's such a good point, and I've been told in the past, I think on a prior LinkedIn Live actually, from one of the many Matts that has shown up on Digital Builder through that channel. It's the first one where we're not inundated with Matts on live episodes, so that's a nice change there. But it's so important to really step back and look at, are we disrupting our teams? Like, is this new tool making their workflow harder in a way that we didn't anticipate? And you really have to have that communication theme that keeps coming through here. And I think it's clear that there are a number of themes that are showing up both in your talk tracks and tied to the technologies that we've mentioned so far. And I'm seeing things like, communication and collaboration. And in the audience, if I'm missing something, throw it in the chat as well. We're talking about data capture and analysis and the management of data, doing more with less and productivity focus, managing our managing our labor crisis and our staff management, and then safety and quality. All of these themes touch these different technologies, whether it's hyped up or not. That's kind of where the core of these narratives are. And so I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into artificial intelligence now, and I think it would be hard not to talk about it at more a more level of depth. And I'm going to put our guests today on the spot a little bit and ask them to go a little deeper than I've heard folks have the opportunity to do in the past. I think we're all hearing that AI is going to change the way we're doing, improve our workflows, that very high level, hype, or trending towards not hype. And so I'm going to define a few terms just to make sure we're all on the same page. So apologies for, dictionary Eric here rambling at us, but let's define artificial intelligence as the theory and development of computers that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. So this could be visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translations. Machine learning is a subset of AI that involves algorithms to learn from data. So examples could be spam marked emails, Netflix show recommendations, your Amazon shopping preferences, and large language models, our friends ChatGPT. This is machine learning that uses a NLP for tasks such as generating and classifying texts, answering questions in a conversational manner. Also, ChatGPT has a tendency to hallucinate at times and make things up. So make sure that you are, keeping your eye on what comes out, because it's not always exactly what you're looking for. But aside from all of those definitions, now let's go a bit deeper. And I'm going to put Brett on the spot since you've identified you are passionate about AI specifically. So can you tell me a bit more about what AI is offering and what's actionable and available now to make the biggest impacts on their projects? So if you were not using any AI tech today and you decided, I'm going to make this change, where should people be focusing and what can they really do? Like what goes beyond the hype?
Well, to speak from an ACC, an Autodesk Construction Cloud standpoint, we're fortunate that Autodesk has already made that investment into AI years ago, and a lot of people don't realize that. I don't think, but we're at CPPI. We're leaning into what Autodesk is currently already doing. So if you look at Construction IQ, what is it doing? How is it helping construction projects? Well, it has a safety AI component to it where it's looking at issues. It's looking at things that come across the ACC Construction Cloud CDE, and it's determining based on that what could be a safety problem, what could be a high risk RFI or high risk issues. My goodness, the amount of documentation that gets produced on a construction site is astronomical in a sense, and it doesn't have to be an extremely large construction site. Oftentimes we're still producing, hundreds, if not thousands, in some case over 10,000 different documentation issues on a project, all the way from pre-construction through owner handoff, and it's impossible for the human mind to wrap themselves around what is something that needs to be addressed. What are the high risk issues that are out there? And so leveraging AI, and in this case, machine learning, to be able to bring the cream to the top, to be able to determine what is those high risk issues is very, very important. And something, quite frankly, is just at the very foothold of the mountain of capabilities that are out there. You look at what Autodesk is doing with tagging of photos. And I hate for this to be like an advertisement spot. I truly don't.
I didn't ask you to say any of this. I promise.
I promise you didn't. And but in a sense, it's real because it's there and it's tangible. It's something that we're able to use and leverage out there. But auto tagging photos. I look at some of our projects. We have massive amounts of photos that get taken during the course of a period of time. So to have that AI that's built in there to start tagging those photos and grouping those together for us, it creates a tremendous amount of load off of our people. So we're leaning into Autodesk's AI, and I'm really excited and hopeful that will continue to build and grow as we continue to do. Because what I don't want to do is go out there and invest a lot of money into technology that Autodesk is already doing, or will soon be able to deliver for us. Now, what we're doing with that information is we're bringing that back in to Power BI, utilizing Power BI so that we can see that data. And again, it has to be actionable, informational and actionable before it means anything to us. But bring that data back into a high level, company wide, region wide, and then multi project level, cross project level basis so that we can determine what is out there that we need to be jumping on sooner rather than later.
You made so many points that I could respond to every single one of them
Yeah,
with
it's a
excitement. But
lot.
you're absolutely right that construction IQ's been out there for I think over 5 years at this point. So it's not necessarily new technology, but it is a theme that the media is paying a whole lot more attention to, especially as things like ChatGPT have continued to
Right.
become more and more prevalent as tools that folks can consider. I've heard folks using ChatGPT to build out their toolbox talks and start building the foundation of communications that saves them time when they go out to have to head to the project site. And I think anything that saves us time right now in a reliable and consistent way is advantageous for our industry. But the other side of that, of course, is I think folks need to realize that whatever you put into ChatGPT is in ChatGPT. So remember that when you're putting, you don't want to put proprietary information or confidential information in there, because the implications of that, I think folks are still starting to really truly parse out. So make sure that you're being thoughtful about that. But that's not to say we shouldn't use these tools. It's just a matter of educating ourselves about the possibilities with them, and then also some of those risks. Like putting the wrong data into the tool, or ChatGPT hallucinating something that didn't actually exist. I think we've seen some examples recently where in the legal system, somebody's using ChatGPT to start their briefs, and it made up a bunch of briefs that they submitted into court, and that's an awkward conversation for everybody
Mm.
after the fact, when they go, "Oh, case number 798 doesn't exist." All right, well, let's learn from that, I guess, as far as what we rely on with that technology. Ariel, anything on your end that you'd like to add to the Chat GP, or not the Chat GPT hype, the AI hype or lack thereof, from your perspective?
I mean, I can jump in that hype train and excitement, but I'm just for fun. I'm gonna go into the other side, right? And just bring it up as a kind of like a friendly debate. But what something that I think it's very common that when people get introduced into a technology, they over rely on this technology, right? So if you don't include the training part, and if you don't try to remember that this is technology that, even if there has been, like you said, even if construction IQ has been implemented for a couple of years now, I mean, this is infancy for this technology. So yes, it's going to be way more developed in 10 years, but what do we have right now? And I think that the education part is key, because we don't want our staff to just go in there and then rely on whatever this systems are providing. Like you're saying, they're hallucinating, right? I mean, we even hallucinate as well, but who's taking the risk? It's not ChatGPT, it's us, right? So even if you use it for something simple as developing your toolbox talks, well, you may want to sure you read those, you confirm that this is accurate. You may want to reach out your safety manager and double check that the information you're going to share with your subcontractors and with everybody on the field, it's accurate, because you don't want to start spreading this misinformation. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of tools out there that they'll do a lot. Let's say you can do renders now by just providing like a bare bone model or schematic, but we still need to tell the system what we're looking for, and we need to keep improving this. Like, we need to get better on how we interact with this system. So your prompts, they have to be accurate. It's not the same just say, hey, provide me a render, that if you say specific instructions on what you're expecting this render to look like, so that your owner connects with that, right? So let's just take a step back and try to understand the limitations that the system currently has and the potential, so that we are not over like selling dreams to our customers and our staff.
You make a really fair point in parsing the accuracy of that information as well. And I think it's good for anybody to have a second set of eyes. And your example of safety is a great one. We have an expert on staff, the safety manager. Let's make sure that the things that we've put into this document actually make sense and are, truthful. But I think that also connects back to another issue is you only get to make a first impression one time with your team. And so if you roll out artificial intelligence and use it to create your toolbox doc and then send that out and it's full of misinformation, and then you have to awkwardly go back to the team hat in hand and say, ignore paragraphs 4, 5, and 6 because that was ChatGPT hallucinating. My bad. Everybody's going to look at you and be like, what on earth? And there's a lot of damage control to doing that because you only get to make somebody's first impression of that technology one time. But I think the other part of that in the evaluation or reevaluation that I mentioned a minute ago is make sure you're keeping stock of where the tools and the technology is evolving. I think a great example is 4 or 5 years ago, you might have put a AR VR headset on in the early stages and gone, oh, this made me sick, or I don't see any use of this and it makes me uncomfortable, or whatever that might be. But the tech has evolved so much in the last 4 or 5 years that those tools are very different from what they were now. And so make sure you're not holding on to an outdated opinion of a piece of technology when there might have been some evolution in the past that set you up to be successful moving forward. So I'd like to move on past AI, and I appreciate both of you giving some real world context and a little bit of the devil's advocate in there too, as far as what you're doing, because I think it makes it a lot more real for people to understand what is here now, because it's so easy to get caught in that overhyping. We're selling the excitement in the vision. But the last time that I had a chance to catch up with both of you, the topic of being a proactive team and not reactive came up repeatedly. And thinking about that for a minute, which of these trends that we've mentioned can help move that needle towards a more proactive approach? Ariel, you mentioned this a number of times. I think both times we spoke. So how about you take it first?
Yeah, so earlier, like I said, let's say that you already identify your truck bites, right? The pain points that you have. So now you have an option, two options. You can either let the industry move forward by itself and then you catch up, or you can sort of like spearhead that, right? And I'm not saying that you need to be 100% innovator, like develop new tools and all that, but at least like go out there. Maybe you go out to a conference, you start exploring, and you get to hear what another company's doing, and you're like, hey, I could probably leverage that. So how about you now start internalizing with your team how you can use that tool that is out there to enhance how you get results. And the reason I say this is because there's so many tools out there, but you gotta, again, identify the ones that make sense. And once you do, well, now you start noticing that, hey, I'm using ACC or any digital documentation management platform to track documentation status and so on and do my forms. Well, guess what? All this data is being managed, is being identified by the system. This data can then be taken and you can implement it for like dashboards or for any other tools that can actually help you with decision making. So don't think about implementations as just like one way. I mean, sometimes they can segue into different implementations. So you start with collaborating using a common data environment. This common data environment is collecting information in different ways. I can now use that information that is project specific to enhance how my company is managing RFIs, how it's managing submittals, closeouts, and so on. That will be one of the examples.
I love that. And it just becomes so important, and obviously so, when you've been in that reactive situation and you're always, every day is wake up and go, what are the fires that I need to put out today? Because the other part of that is it makes it very difficult to think strategically and look at that beyond tomorrow or Friday or next Monday vision for both your project but the broader company. And when you're able to put those tools in a position where you're not just panicking every day to answer all these RFIs or make sure your owners feeling good about whatever project update you've shared with them, it really benefits your business, but it really benefits the people too. The stress levels go down, the follow through changes. It's an entire, I think, cultural conversation when we really focus on that change. Brad, I'd love it if you shared any thoughts you had on this topic as far as that shift from being proactive to or reactive to proactive, and how some of these trends might help us along the way.
Sure. So, um, in order to be proactive, again, we're collecting a lot of data. Construction sites and construction projects are amassing amounts of data that is incomprehensible to the human mind. We have to be able to bring that into a visible way. So, it's important that CPPI, for example, we use Power BI. We leverage that a heck of a lot, and to be able to gain insights into the project, to know whether something is trending south, we need to get ahead of it now instead of waiting until towards the end of the project and then realizing, whoops, we've got a problem here. So we've integrated with our ERP system. So instead of having to wait for a job cost report or something to come from accounting, we get that real time data flowing from our accounting department, our accounting system, to our build cost management system, so that our project managers can see in real time what's happening on that project. But not just from a financial standpoint, but we also need to be proactive when it comes to issues that are being created, RFIs and submittals and response times and who's staying on top of what. The amount of time that we were having to do that prior to Power BI was great. I mean, it was taking a whole day to sit down and go through a project performance meeting to make sure that we were dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's. To bring that into a near real time dashboard and analytics tool is extremely important, because we can take not only just one project, but we can create dozens or even hundreds of projects, bring all of that into one dashboard and know where our problems are. We can kind of see where our heat maps are and determine, and these particular projects here need help. And we can jump on that before it becomes a real world problem, I'll call it, and it starts impacting schedule, or it starts impacting the profitability of the project.
I think just getting our dashboards in a more focused way is important as well. I think we had a moment where everybody went, okay, we do construction data, we have dashboards, but your nuance of what do you actually need or want to make your decisions should absolutely be informing how you set your dashboards up, but also what data you're capturing and how you standardize how you capture it too. Many people have heard me probably, go on and on about construction data. I'm a construction data nerd. I can't help it. But the importance of doing this right and with thought is so critical in making sure that we're successful moving forward as a business and as an industry when we bring in these new technologies, because everybody's capturing their data differently, and making sure that there are no standards applied. It becomes a bigger challenge at scale, and it's harder to compare your information from project to project and make those bigger organizational decisions as well. So there's a lot really tied up into it, but I think it's important to remember too that the data journey, even if you're really early in it and it seems a little bit overwhelming, this is an opportunity. This is not a bad thing. This is not a scary thing. Construction data shouldn't be freaking out. Let's make sure that we're taking stock of where we can make the biggest impact if we are iterating on our construction data strategies, make those focus changes, and then roll it out more broadly. And then everything starts to become more streamlined. Ariel, I see you have your hand up. If you disagree with what I'm sharing, please poke your finger in my eye. Otherwise, I'd be curious what you're thinking.
I agree with what you're saying. I just wanted to make sure that we don't forget the word again, collaboration. When you are implementing innovation, it's not just to say, hey, we're fancy and we use technology. This technology needs to make sense. So a dashboard is not just to develop a dashboard. I mean, you can go online and you can download a template, but if this template is not helping your staff to make better decisions, then it doesn't make any sense, right? You need to customize those dashboards and make sure that the people using it, they're finding, some good use that is improving the bottom line of the company.
Well, and also to add on to that, kind of back to what Eric was talking about, you have to create those standard operating procedures or those practices, and then train on those before the data is actually reliable and useful.
Here's
If you
training.
have, you could have the best, KPI spreadsheet out there for measuring your performance on RFIs and response times. But if your folks aren't actually utilizing the systems and the tools the correct way, then your dashboard can be thrown off. It can just not be helpful at all. So, to everyone's point here, dashboards are great, but in order to be able to be proactive, there's more to that. There's process, and then there's training behind that, and then there's a continuation of that throughout the life cycle of the software to ensure that your data is organized and structured in such a way that dashboards and that proactive approach to analytics is useful.
You saw me pumping my fist on the mention of training because it's such a
Yeah.
important nuance of this, not just in helping folks understand, how you expect them to use the tool, but you're giving them an opportunity to have a stake in what's happening. You're helping them understand the why. And it's a conversation to the extent that it makes sense to be one as a business. Obviously, not every decision is going to be made democratically when we roll out data changes or, whatever aspect of our tech stack we're talking about. But when people feel informed and included, and you have a chance to hear what they're struggling with, it makes the rollout of these changes so impactful, and also helps people understand why you're asking them to do something that might take 5 more minutes than it did previously, but you show them the value of what they get from that extra 5 minutes, and they're much more likely to be signed up because you go, hey, you have all this information now that helps you make real decisions that you can be confident in. Augmenting the experience and the knowledge that you have as an industry professional, that's a huge win. Instead of just saying, do it this way because we said so. I know it takes 10 more minutes and you've got to drag a new tool out to the field. How much adoption are you going to get on that? If somebody is really down the line on finishing something for a schedule and it's, do I grab the iPad or do I not? You might not have great adoption at that point. Unfortunately, it's an ongoing conversation. But I've got a couple more questions for you guys here. One of these I've actually sourced from our Big Room community, and it's from Derek Wilfong, a senior VDC director from Lease Crutcher Lewis. He's based outside of Portland, Oregon, not too far off from me, as I'm in Oregon these days as well. But the question is, digital documentation, data management in the cloud has challenged not only our workforce, but the partners who we interface with on projects. How have you managed to adopt new workflows for digital management while educating the trade partners you work with? And I think this is a wonderful question because it's not just your own team that needs to come along for the ride on a construction project. And so, Brad, how about you kick this one off? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how you manage, the digital fund that we're talking about here today in working with all the different trade partners that you bring to your projects.
So our move forward goal is to bring everyone into the same environment, so that we don't have to log out of this system to log into this system to access data. But the reality is oftentimes owners require different systems for us to work in. So we have to play in the same sandbox, if you will. And then the other challenge is oftentimes we're dealing with a design team that perhaps isn't using the same technology. So our first goal is to bring everyone into ACC when applicable, right? The second thing we do is we leverage a hybrid cloud. And that hybrid cloud gives us the ability to store our files and folders in a way that we can share them out easily. We can have people working within that environment and then pull that information into ACC so that we can have that for the broader audience.
It makes sense, and in not having duplicate platforms or separate platforms makes so much sense because one, you've got all that redundant data entry that's going to be happening between the general contractor and your trade partners, but two, just that communication becomes so much more seamless when you're centralized in a common data environment, and your communication has a very clear workflow that it can follow and isn't hidden in text messages and emails and memos and smoke signals and whatever else you might be talking about.
And Eric, if I could add to that, Autodesk is touted now for a little over a year that it's creating this platform, so that other companies can integrate to. And I think that these companies need to understand the importance. Everyone needs to quit trying to compete with one another and recognize that there needs to be some interoperability between systems, and that there needs to be integrations between, I'm not going to name the names, but you know all of them that are out there, that these owners require, that these architects and design teams need to have access to, so that we can actually work under the same common data environment and structure our data in such a way that it can be leveraged without having to have duplicate efforts, duplicate work, and then data in silos throughout the construction project. We need to have that information brought together under one common data environment.
You make a really great point, and I feel like every company in the history of time now has their own definition for both artificial intelligence and what a platform is. And it varies based on who you're talking about. But I think the moment has arrived to pick the right platform for your team that you're going to build off of, whatever that might be. And you really do need to look at the broader ecosystem of tools that you use. Do their APIs function in a way that move the data around? Is there, native connections between those tools in a way that means you don't have to move port data around in a manual way, which introduces all the mistakes that we've been talking about, all day long today. And so when you are picking your construction technology, when you start, it's really important to think about that long-term vision and all the tools that your teams use and what they might use, because that decision does impact a lot of things for many years to come, depending on the trajectory of the business. Ariel, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts too. Any extra or other advice on bringing your trade partners into the mix in a way that is equitable as far as information and communication goes?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say kudos to Alex Eckert for managing such an amazing community. The big room, it's great. I'm really happy that we're getting questions from there. If you're not part of the big room, make sure you join. It's an amazing community. Now, going back to the question, as a GC or construction manager, you need to understand something. You become an educator. You can do that upstream because you need to educate clients. You need to educate also even your architects and engineers, and you have to do it downstream because again, you have to educate those subcontractors. Now, to give you an idea of how we do that, and it's kind of fun, we host this builders breakfast. We do this every now and then where we invite a certain amount of companies to come to our office where we host this breakfast. We got tacos and a couple of things there, but we walk them through the systems that we're using, kind of get their onboarding, get their thoughts, walk them through, because sometimes it sounds like it's very intimidating if you just tell them that they need to use this system as opposed to show them and kind of like walk them through. Now, we started using Autodesk Construction Cloud back in 2021, and since then, about 3 years, we have onboarded about 825 people. I just checked our system. So that's a lot of subcontractors. That's a lot of AEs. That's a lot of owners as well. And the only way you're going to get, a really good activity and making sure that they comply on using the system is by doing these trainings. Now, we also do this with owners and AEs where we meet every month, just sitting down with them, get their thoughts and show them what we're doing and the value of the system so that they understand, hey, how is this also helping me as a subcontractor? So again, like I said, you got to wear that hat, understand that you are also an educator, and it's, the benefit for you is that you get everybody to be on board, and obviously, managing that common data environment and reducing that friction. Even if you say in your front-end documents, your project manuals, you need to use X platform, if you don't walk them through, it's going to be really difficult to get that buy-in.
Education, you're absolutely right. It's a core tenet to success across everything we do in construction. And I also love how you pointed out educating our owners specifically, because there's a real opportunity, especially if you have a good relationship with an owner, to share something about technology they may not be informed on. Some of the serial builders out there who build over and over and over again, they may be far more adept at digital twin technology or how they can be involved in the platform themselves or what dashboards are available to them. But the real value there is to bring them into your camp and say, hey, this is why I'm excited about this. And if you've got that existing relationship, hopefully they trust you as well, and you've qualified that you're there to offer more transparency into the process in a way that you might not have been able to offer them previously, especially if you didn't have a common data environment or were still sitting in the era of paper documentation being king on a construction project. And I know paper still shows up out in the field, but I think we're trending away from that in a meaningful way these days, which is an incredible opportunity, I think, for any organization, especially if you haven't digitized to that degree. That's definitely low hanging fruit, just getting off of paper. But I'd like to wrap up one more question, and then we'll move into drawing some questions from our audience before our hour wraps up. And so the final one I have today is surprisingly or unsurprisingly tied to industry trends. And Ariel, I'm going to send this one way. You're first. What are some of the trends that you're most excited about looking beyond 2024? Even those you might have thrown a little bit of shade at in our rapid fire round at the beginning and feel they're in hype territory today. But what do you think is coming, even if it might not be a reality, in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that whatever you call it, virtual reality, computational, spatial computation, augmented reality, whatever it is, right? I think that the fact that Apple just jumped into this environment, it's gonna create some heat into getting these technologies to be applied in an interesting way. So now you have big companies developing this virtual reality, augmented reality goggles, and I'm kind of curious to see where we're gonna be 2-3 years from now. So I think that that's gonna be a really interesting topic, and I think that as we get, the interesting thing about, let's say, getting an Apple and then something like Meta in this environment is that we're gonna have all these developers coming into this environment, developing new uses on how we can leverage this technology that it has been there for a while, but hey, it's time to just move on from this looks nice for just like real estate and or just looking at a model. How can we actually bring this to the field or use it for another purpose? I think it's going to be a good one.
I want somebody to send me an Apple Vision Pro very badly. I haven't had a chance to play with
Send
one
one
yet.
here as well. I need one too.
They're interesting. If anybody has an extra one and you want to send it to me to geek out just because it's going to be fun, please shoot me a DM. I will take you up on that. But Brad, how about you? What trends beyond 2024 are you fired up about, even if you think that they're in hype territory today?
Oh man, this is almost cringeworthy when we talk about hype, and we did throw some shade on this one. It was robotics, but there is a possibility that we can solve some of the labor crisis challenges that we're having today, but it's, I believe, is going to be more exponential as we move forward in the next decade even. Um, we've got to hope that there's going to be some opportunity where robotics can come into a job site and actually be useful and helpful and work alongside our folks to be able to do some of these tasks that are dangerous, do some of these tasks that have created safety challenges for us in the past, but also help leverage some of these staffing problems that we experience on the job site with skilled labor.
You make such a great point, and I think the long-term opportunity tied to robotics is an exciting one. I mean, we're seeing folks, hanging drywall with robotics now. We're seeing a lot of concrete finishing work happening with robotics. All kinds of really cool stuff that doesn't, build from start to finish, but does take some of that manual work out. Oftentimes we'll have our skilled tradespeople come in and after the fact and put the finishing touches on it because they do have such an incredible skill set and talent. But finding ways where we can bring this in and continue to evolve how it impacts our workflows is huge. And I'd agree with you. We threw a little bit of shade earlier, in a joking way, but it is a reality in that there is robotics out there today, or are robotics out there today impacting our projects. The evolution, I think, is where the most potential comes with. So I'm gonna agree with you on that one. Great,
100%.
great thought there. All right. So we have a few minutes until our hour wraps. I know we've actually run longer than we were scheduled, but if you are still out there, I've got some of your questions coming in. If you've got new ones, keep throwing them in the chat. I will pull as many as I can before either our guests run out of steam or the hour wraps or I run out of steam myself. But let's start with the first one here today. And this is coming from James Schmidt. How can construction companies effectively engage and motivate older construction workers, including those in management roles, to embrace digital tools for fieldwork tracking, considering potential resistance stemming from unfamiliarity or reluctance towards technology? I have some thoughts here on this one, but Ariel, I think it comes back to some of the things we talked about earlier. So I'm going to send this one to you, and then Brad, weigh in if you have any additional thoughts. How can we help James Schmidt out?
Yeah, I think there is understanding something that each generation is bringing value, right? When you think about that, you try to like reduce that competition. Understand that hey, there's folks here that they've been in the industry for so many years, and they are like a walking Bible. They know so much. Now we have this new generation that they are very they can grab technology super fast, but they lack the knowledge. So how can I connect this two? How can I bridge this knowledge gap with this tools implementation gap, right? And I think eventually you get folks that they don't need to do the task by themselves, but how about pairing them with somebody that actually can, while they're also teaching the importance. One example would be, and we've done this on a couple projects. We have a superintendent that is very well experienced, but he's not very good at using the computer. Well, we have a young project engineer that sits down with him, and he's working on the digital forms, the daily forms for the job, and the superintendent is explaining him why it is important to make this note or catch this information. Why is he taking a picture of this particular area? So eventually, again, you're also showing the person with the more experience that doesn't use the computer how other people can leverage that. Back in the day, maybe we were using like a paper form, and it will take they needed to scan it, or it will take a full week so that the project manager could see it. Now this information is shared real time. So this is sort of the way that I would do it, is making sure that you're connecting these two generations and making the most out of the two. And you have to be very clear that again, nobody's taking the job away from the other. It's just how we collaborate together.
I love that. And it's an example I've heard in the past on bringing these two sometimes different groups together in a really impactful way, because that knowledge transfer is tremendous, and it goes two directions, both with the technology and also with just that industry knowledge. Because let's be real, we have a lot of folks who are going to be retiring in the next 5 or less years, and they're going to be taking a lot of knowledge with them that needs to make its way into these younger generations that are joining the industry, so they can be confident in their knowledge about building, and then pulling the technology to fill the gaps as appropriate. Brad, I'm going to move on to the next question because I think Ariel did a great job answering it, and I want to jump into a few more while we still have time. And I'm going to send this one your way. It's tied to AI. And Greg Walters asked, not to get too tactical, but is there a huge AI application in takeoffs or estimating in bid day? What do you think here?
Today, I'm not sure that technology is flushed out, but there is a move in that direction that we're hoping to see these technologies make some big moves in, so they can help in a bid day scenario where we can do more immediate takeoffs when it comes to some of the more complex drawings, and dial that in such a way that it can be helpful. If we're looking at something that everyone's surrounding the estimate and they're making some immediate decisions, and can they leverage AI today? Probably not in the hopes that you would want it to be, but I certainly feel like that's the direction that the industry is moving.
I'm really hopeful there. As a former proposal manager who has retired his proposal hat and moved on to other things after doing that for a number of years, the stress on bid day, especially when we were still printing everything, which thankfully is starting to go by the wayside, of bringing all these pieces of information together and packaging and submitting, it was a nightmare. Let's be real. It's partly why I am not a manager anymore, because submitting two $200 million bids 20 minutes apart isn't a very fun activity. And it would happen, very often. But I think the opportunity for any startup founders out there right now is, how do we make a tool that allows our proposal and bid efforts leveraging AI to go smoother than they have historically? Because the challenge I ran into was finding a tool then, and this was obviously 6 or 7 years ago, that we could use for proposal management that fit the construction industry. Because at that time there were tools that did this, but they were more for the Q&A type proposals or RFPs, and very much not the narrative driven ones that we have with the estimates and all the different specific documentation. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. But Brad, I'd agree with you. I'm not sure we're quite there yet on the AI handing in our bids for us with confidence, and we don't have the stress of, did the email go out or not, which I don't envy anybody who's sitting and watching their outbooks going, did I meet the deadline? Did I meet the deadline? I think we got one more or time for one more question, and then we are at the hour, and I have to let our guests get back to their busy days. And Ariel, I'm going to send this one your direction, and then Brad, if you have any thoughts, jump in. And this comes from Lisa Schmidt. How is your company adapting to the growing trend of sustainable construction practices? And what specific measures are you implementing to reduce environmental impact on your projects? We'll wrap with that one.
That's a really good question, and especially because there's a growing trend there as well. So I would say that try to see if there's any tools that you can leverage. I mean, Autodesk actually has a really good carbon calculator that you can probably leverage right now. So if that's something that can potentially help you, that I would say that is a nice way to just get your foot in the door when it comes to decarbonization and those type of implementations. So again, try to meet with your owners, try to understand if that's something that matters to them, or if it's something that matters to leadership, right? And start identifying, what can I do and what tools are out there for me. Again, this calculator is pretty much free, and it's open source, so you should be able to jump right into it. And it connects to building information models, so that's actually pretty good too.
I like it. Brad, any final thoughts to throw into the mix on the sustainability question before I let you both and our live audience go today?
Probably not from a technology standpoint, but from some of the practices that construction companies and CPPI especially has been doing is learning different ways where you could recycle to be able to dispose of waste and material in a more eco-friendly way. I think is kind of those getting back to the practical standpoints is where we should be focusing our attention on.
Yeah, and it's ever more important. I mean, we all are very familiar with the amount of waste that comes out of construction and the importance of sustainability. Any way we can tackle that with technology, I think, is a huge win. So that's a great question. But I think we are officially out of time and overtime today, so I'm going to wrap us up today. Gentlemen, of course, thank you so much for sharing your experience and knowledge with us today. It was an absolute pleasure, and I very much appreciate it. For everybody who joined us live, you've made it through the full hour, so thank you for hanging out with us today. Of course, I am your trusty host, Eric Thomas. If you like what you saw today, you can find Digital Builder on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, also YouTube. We are a video first podcast, so if you haven't watched any of our backlog, you should check that out. We'll throw some links into the chat. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn if you'd like to find and see more updates from myself about Digital Builder, or you can find me on Twitter at builder_digital. Aside from that, if you've got any other final questions or feedback, you can shoot me a message. And without any further ado, goodbye. And thank you very much.